Ladies and gentlemen, hey hi, how you doing? Welcome back to the channel. We of course have broken down a lot of best class setups and whatnot so far this year, but something we haven't really focused on too much is that of the secondary category. But obviously, everyone's going to have a secondary equipped on their class, and I'd venture as far as saying that the vast majority of the time, it is going to be a pistol in that spot. So today we're breaking down the best class setups for every pistol we have available right now. But before we jump into that, if you're new here, feel free to subscribe with your notifications turned on. That way you can stay up to date with the latest Call of Duty news and intel. And of course, if you enjoy the video at any point, let me know by dropping a like on it. Now, like I said, the majority of the time, unless you're going for, certain camo challenges, or you just really can't stand kill streaks, you are probably going to be running a pistol on your class as a secondary. And between the 5 that we currently have available, we've honestly got quite a few pretty solid options to choose from. So, starting with the X16, this is the very first pistol you end up unlocking, and in my opinion, it is probably the third best pistol that we have out of the 5, between its fire rate, ease of use, and just overall damage. So here my attachment setup consists of the monolithic suppressor, and that's going to increase the range of the weapon, while also giving it that basic sound suppression, which ultimately is going to be a pretty common theme amongst most of these pistol setups today, because with these kind of weapons, the more range you have, the better in most circumstances. Extra range is never going to hurt you per se. Anyways, after that I've got the Singuard Arms Advantage Barrel, which ends up increasing both the damage range and also the bullet velocity, and really the main draw there is once again that range increase. Then I've got the Tac Laser on there as well, and this is going to help with the overall mobility, but it is also going to help with the stability too, so keeping on target is going to be slightly easier, particularly in those longer gunfights you may run into on some of those larger maps, or even if you're using this thing in ground war. I then also use the lightweight trigger. This is another pretty common attachment you'll see throughout the video today, as the increase to the fire rate is really extremely beneficial in my mind, and if you have a good trigger finger, or if you use a scuff controller like me, close range engagements suddenly become a whole lot easier, because you can essentially spam this weapon, and thus the TTK per engagement is going to be a lot quicker because of that fire rate increase. And then lastly, per usual, I've also got the stippled grip tape on the X16 as well, to once again increase that overall mobility. So ultimately, with this attachment setup equipped, the X16 is going to perform a lot better in close and medium range fights specifically. Long range, this weapon really is not going to be all that efficient regardless of your setup, but if you do happen to run out of bullets and you need to stay in an engagement, swapping to your pistol is always faster, as they say, and this X16 setup is a pretty nice backup plan to have when you need to put it into action. Now, following the X16, we then have the 1911, and this pistol is definitely my least favorite out of all of them, and I would also say this one is the worst as well. Unless, of course, you're in hardcore, in which case this is just an average pistol then. So here once again I am using the monolithic suppressor for the same reasons as on the X16. Then I've got the 1911 Stalker Barrel, and that increases the damage range and the bullet velocity just like before. I've also got the lightweight trigger on there as well, because the 1911's fire rate honestly is not all that ideal for CQC engagements, and that's then followed by the 10-round mags as well, because this weapon doesn't have a very large magazine by default, and thus you do find yourself reloading pretty frequently and not really able to engage multiple enemies consistently. Then this class is rounded out with the stippled grip tape once more for the same mobility boosts as before. Now, truth be told, even with this setup, the 1911 is still not some insane pistol. This is definitely the best setup that I've found for it, but I really do think it stays at the bottom of the barrel in this case. I found the kick or the recoil of this weapon just to be kind of a nuisance, so I actually found myself not spamming as fast with it as some of the other pistols. However, with that lightweight trigger, I am still able to fire fast enough to, keep myself alive in a gunfight, because, without it, between this game's pretty fast TTK and the lackluster 1911 in its stock form, I did find myself getting taken out quite a bit. One thing I will also say about the 1911 is that headshots are absolutely crucial when it comes to actually making this weapon effective. If you can consistently land headshots, you're going to be in for a good time. If you can't, though, it just might be better to opt for a different pistol instead. Like maybe the 357 Magnum, because this, on the other hand, is a very easy weapon to use, especially with the following setup equipped. So here I'm using the 357 long barrel to increase the damage range, the recoil control, and the bullet velocity. The 5mm laser, as I find hip fire with this thing to be incredibly effective, and you'll see why here in just a moment. I've also got the lightweight trigger in use on this setup as well, as the stock fire rate is not great for getting a couple kills back to back to back. Then, most importantly on this setup, I use the snake shot ammo modification, as this increases the damage radius, and that makes this weapon even more lethal, especially when you are firing from the hip. And that's why that 5mW laser comes into play on this class. Then, finally, surprise surprise, there is actually no stippled grip tape here, and instead I opt for sleight of hand, that way I can reload a bit faster, as this weapon only comes with 6 shots. So if you're lucky, that is 2 to potentially 6 kills before you have to reload, but I do try to reload frequently so that I'm prepared for any kind of possible situation in the future. And I mean, as you guys can see in the gameplay in the background, up close this weapon is pretty much unstoppable. It can one hit in those really close engagements, it is a consistent 2 to 3 shot kill leading up to those medium range fights, and in general it is a very powerful secondary that is pretty consistent at the end of the day. But moving on, next up we've got the M19, which is very similar to the X16 in my eyes. Both pistols perform about the same from my experience with them, and thus their class setups are pretty close to one another. Here I'm using the monolithic suppressor once again for the same reasons as before, the XRKL Super Barrel, which I think has a pretty noticeable impact on this weapon, as it increases its range, control, and bullet velocity, just enhancing its overall efficiency in all ranges quite honestly, and in the end this is a pretty important part of the setup. Then I've got the tack laser on here for the same reasons as before, alongside the lightweight trigger to up that fire rate, and the stippled grip tape to help with the sprint to fire and aim down sight speeds. Now, much like the X16, this setup is going to be the best and most efficient in close and medium range gunfights. This is, once again, a pistol that doesn't really do that much in those long range engagements, but when you can consistently aim for the chest or above while also staying on target, this pistol is going to actually win a surprising amount of gunfights. And also, I don't know if this is just me, but with this specific attachment setup, I honestly felt like this was very similar to that of the USP45 in the general way it behaves in-game, so it is also a little nostalgic in that sense for me too. Then, finally, to wrap up the pistol setups for today, we have what is easily my favorite pistol to use in the entire game, and that is none other than the 50GS, aka the Desert Eagle. Now, I do have a full-on video dedicated to the best Deagle setup, so if you want to see this thing in action in a live commentary format, be sure to check out that video on the channel. But to essentially sum it up, here I'm using the monolithic suppressor yet again, the forged tack enforcer barrel which extends the damage range and also increases the recoil control and bullet velocity, the lightweight trigger once more, followed by the classic stippled grip tape, then lastly I've got the sleight of hand weapon perk on here too, but if you want you can swap that out for the tack laser if you use this pistol at longer distances. Personally, I do use this as a very aggressive and rush friendly pistol I guess, so faster reloading just helps with my playstyle. However, that tack laser and the stability it offers can definitely help in those longer range engagements too. But this setup is going to result in a consistent 2 to 3 shot kill at most ranges honestly, and it's also a one shot to the head which not only makes the 50GS incredibly efficient, but also super satisfying to use too. Now, my personal rankings of these pistols would probably result in the Deagle at number 1, the 357 at number 2, the X16 at number 3 with the M19 at number 4. However, those two are so close they could kind of flip-flop and it really wouldn't be all that different. And then finally at number 5, it is the 1911 without a doubt. So if you are someone looking for a very powerful pistol setup, I would highly recommend trying out the 50GS class. If you're someone looking for a relatively easy pistol setup to use that's just really efficient for getting quick kills here and there, then I'd recommend going with the 357 Magnum class. If you're someone who just wants a genuinely consistent pistol, the M19 and the X16 are definitely great choices there, and if you're someone who just wants a challenge or a headache, I guess the 1911 would be sufficient there. Anyways, with all of that being said, that is effectively the best class setup or attachment setup to use on every pistol we currently have available here in Modern Warfare, and that is going to wrap things up for today. If you guys enjoyed the video or if you just found it helpful, let me know by dropping a like on it. And of course, if you're new here and you want to stay up to date with the latest Call of Duty news and intel, updates and leaks, and pretty much everything else in between, feel free to subscribe with your notifications turned on. That way you'll always know when I post a new video. As always, if you want to check out any of my partners, be sure to use code IMMORTAL on all Scuff, G Fuel, Control Freak, and Respawn products. All of those links can be found down in the description below, and once again, thanks so much for tuning in. Until next time, take it easy, have an awesome rest of your day, and I'll catch you guys later. Peace out.